Feminism has shaken and stirred the world since the first woman stood up and questioned gender-based discrimination. Feminism, or the idea that people are equal regardless of sex, has always existed, but the mass movement and global revolution as we now know it shaped itself from early feminists in the first and second wave.
During the first wave of feminism, the goals were de jure, focusing on inequalities explicitly written in law. Women such as Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Susan B. Anthony, the Grimke sisters, and Lucretia Mott led the movement. With significant achievements such as the Seneca Falls Convention and the Declaration of Sentiments, first-wave feminists focused primarily on giving women a voice in government. The first wave gained ground on women's property rights and, of course, suffrage with the passage of the landmark 19th Amendment on August 26 of 1920. In their time, the first-wave feminists were certainly perceived as revolutionary radicals, not simply dainty petticoat-wearing women politely picketing for suffrage. However, the first movement of feminism did not address topics usually associated with modern feminism, such as reproductive rights, sexuality, familial roles, in general, the social stigma associated with being a woman.
A significant and vital difference between the first and second wave is exemplified by the goals of each. Whereas the culmination of the first wave was embodied by the 19th Amendment, the second wave was exemplified by support of the Equal Rights Amendment.
Equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex.
By this time, second-wave feminism focused on de facto inequalities by demanding that women be given a voice not only in politics, but in society. Therefore, we see how directly the ideals of the second wave evolved from its first-wave counterpart into the modern form of feminism we see today. Within this evolution, there is a momentous shift in August of 1970 when the feminist movement finally grew from its grassroots organization into a global revolution, encompassing women from all walks of life, bypassing the lines of color and class.
In 1966, the National Organization of Women, based in Washington, D.C., was created to
take action to bring women into full participation in the mainstream of American society now.
Betty Friedan, the author of The Feminine Mystique, which introduced the social aspects of feminism into the movement, was the founder and leader of this association. She took the goals of first-wave feminism and added the nuanced societal factors which the first wave's agenda lacked.
We realize that women's problems are linked to many broader questions of social justice. Therefore, convinced that human rights for all are indivisible, we expect to give active support to the common cause of equal rights for all those who suffer discrimination and deprivation.
In Betty Friedan's last words to the Now Coalition in March of 1970, she spoke of her vision for an uprising of women all over the country.
A fellow feminist and friend of Betty Friedan, Gloria Steinem, was also drumming up support for the movement. In the spring of 1970, she addressed a Congress subcommittee on the importance of passing the Equal Rights Amendment. A few weeks later, she was invited to give the commencement speech for the graduating class at Vassar College. In her riveting oratory, she urged her audience to question the preconceptions of gender, race, and other frivolous criteria traditionally used to discriminate against minorities. Steinem demanded the women's liberation movement expand beyond mere politics and economics. She called for a movement that encompassed larger cultural issues that influenced the lives of both women and men.
On March 20, 1970, Betty Friedan began to actualize her desire for an uprising of women. On this day, she gave a speech where she explicitly called for a strike that would incorporate both veteran and recent feminists. Though she had resigned as president of NOW, she continued to be active in the movement and was determined to actualize her vision. Working with Steinem and Jackie Sabalos, the Women's Strike for Equality was steadily becoming a reality.
The 1970 Strike for Equality was a tremendous success. It involved thousands of women spanning 90 cities and 42 states. Although the participating women and their respective actions were extremely diverse, they all represented three main demands: access to abortions and other contraceptive measures, inexpensive and widely available childcare, and equal opportunities in jobs and education. Feminists urged women to replace household tasks and menial labor with enthusiastic participation in a growing revolution. Women physically and symbolically rid themselves of objects of oppression such as high heels and cosmetics and freedom trash cans. Slogans such as, "Don't iron while the strike is hot," "End human sacrifice, don't get married," and the direct and less radical "Women demand equality" demonstrated the goals of the females. Requests for passage of the Equal Rights Amendment rang throughout the demonstrations. Babyists and silent sentinel impersonations were other manifestations of the day. These future history makers marched throughout the United States, numbering up to 50,000 in New York alone. The strike attracted public attention and tremendous media coverage. There were accounts of men walking alongside women, as well as many accounts of men who both verbally and physically attacked the strikers.
What do you want? Equality! You don't know what the hell you want!
Nevertheless, there was an argument no one could refute. Feminism had hit the mainstream and it would not turn back. Due to extensive media coverage, the strike's influence reached a national audience. Eventually, the concepts of second-wave feminism would extend globally, but for now, the poignant words of the second-wave feminists emblazoned the TV screens in every American household.
With Friedan's dreams finally a reality, both Steinem and she realized how much the strike would change the playing field for feminism.
It was the first time that I, and I think many of us, had actually marched for women of all races together. This was the first big march, and it changed our consciousness, it changed our lives.
Whereas the previous wave had been propelled by the desires of white middle-class females only, feminism now fully incorporated women of different color and class. This distinction made feminism more accessible, stretching the movement to cover the needs of all instead of some. The seemingly minute difference would have enormous effects on third-wave feminism and the perception of equality.
On behalf of the unprecedented coalition of women that today called this strike to confront the unfinished business of our equality, women young and old, women black and white, women students, women grandmothers who fought for the original right to vote.
Of course, the importance of an event is not measured by immediate reception, but rather its influence on subsequent events. The women's strike of 1970 inspired a new generation of young feminists and paved the way for countless milestones. Soon after the strike, the United States House of Representatives passed the Equal Rights Amendment with a 350-16 majority. The Senate passed it a few years later. Despite falling 3 states short of ratification, the ERA replenished the hopes of all feminists. Exactly 1 year from the strike, Congress would pass a resolution forever marking August 26 as National Women's Equality Day. The same year, Friedan, Steinem, and others founded the National Women's Political Caucus. 2 years from the strike brought the passage of Title IX of the Education Amendment Acts, which supported female athletic programs. 3 years after the strike came Supreme Court case Roe v. Wade, which gave women reproductive rights never previously seen. This landmark decision established abortion privacy rights, requiring all states to allow first trimester abortions. In 1981, the first Supreme Court Justice, Sandra Day O'Connor, was sworn in.
In the months and years which followed, there was a significant change in the face of the movement. Gloria Steinem, a well-known figure in feminism as demonstrated by her social experiments and radical journalistic endeavors, naturally fit with the symbol of the 1970s feminist: strong, invincible, and adamant. Gloria Steinem represented the bunnies of the world, the mistreated, degraded women who longed for greater opportunities but only received scraps from our male-dominated society.
Even so, Gloria Steinem still believed in the integration of racial minorities, differing socioeconomic groups, and even males themselves. Although criticized by her conservative contemporaries and later the radical third-wave feminists who would follow, she was able to represent a wide range of feminists because of her moderate views. Gloria opened the door for the average woman to embody her own ideals. Many feminists would proudly enter the public sphere in later decades. Gloria Steinem founded Ms. Magazine in 1972 with Liberty Media. Ms. was a purposely ambiguous title, and Ms. could not be identified by her husband or lack thereof, and Ms. could define herself. Ms. Magazine was the first widely published magazine created by women for women. The first issue sold out completely, with subsequent issues reaching the same heights. At its peak, the magazine reached an audience of over 500,000. Though Gloria had already created her own magazine, her presence infiltrated the covers of many others such as Time, Newsweek, New Woman, and Parade. Gloria Steinem, or rather, the image of Gloria, was arguably one of the most unexpected and yet necessary legacies of the strike. Gloria Steinem is the culmination of second-wave ideals within one social-political figure. Gloria would dedicate the rest of her life to advocacy and inspiration. She bridged the gap between race, class, and feminism, if not completely, still significant. Both the 1970 strike for women's equality and Gloria Steinem proved to be major turning points for second-wave feminism, without which the gains made, both societal and legal, could not have been executed, without which feminism would not be what it is to us today.
This is no simple reform. It really is a revolution. Sex and race, because they are easy, visible differences, have been the primary ways of organizing human beings into superior and inferior groups, and into the cheap labor on which this system still depends. We are talking about a society in which there will be no roles other than those chosen or those earned. We are really talking about humanism.